Well, in case you're wondering, I am one of the laggards. I've never early adopted anything. Never been in the early or maybe late majority, I don't know. I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you that media is a big influencer in our culture, especially around about this time every 4 years or so. And as you saw in the video, or media that we just consumed, there are many ways that we are influenced by media, even subconsciously. In fact, we could start with the video we just watched. Who made it? And why? What was the message they were trying to sell? Out of all the videos out there about media and its effects on us, why did I choose this one? Well, let me pull back the curtain for you just a wee bit on that process. Obviously, every week I try to find a video that somehow speaks to the topic that we're covering, and usually it needs to be relatively brief. Between 3 to 5 minutes is ideal. So even though there are tons of fascinating TED Talks on the influence of the media, 15 minutes is way too long. Is the content suitable? Music, language, graphics, or even how a subject is approached are all part of what I look at when I choose a video. Is it informative? Or sometimes maybe it just sets the right mood. So as you can see, by the time this video has ended up in front of you today, there's been an entire process that included both the makers of the video and myself deciding what we want to put in front of you. That requires a lot of discernment. Do you trust me with that? It's questionable sometimes, depending on who you ask. Back in 2020, so this has been 4 years ago now, it was projected that Americans spent 13 hours and 35 minutes per day with media. That's more than 50% of the actual available time on any given day spent with some kind of media. Out of 8 billion people in the world, more than 5 billion have access to the internet. Almost 4 billion have social media accounts. Remember, this was back in 2020. It's probably more now. YouTube has some 500 hours of content uploaded to it every minute by over 2 billion users. Now, to put that into perspective, 500 hours is roughly 3 weeks. Okay? So every minute on YouTube, new video is uploaded that if you started watching it and never stopped for 3 weeks, you would get through that. That's uploaded every minute. Over 1 billion hours of video on YouTube is watched every single day. Obviously not by the same person. There are also about 350,000 new tweets every minute. And almost 5 billion Facebook posts made per day. And these are just 3 social media platforms out of many. If you add in cable TV with over 200 channels of mostly 24-hour programming, and that what you have is a fire hose of media content hitting you nonstop. It makes the words of Jesus in the gospel reading this morning all the more pertinent. Be careful what you put into your mind. Your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body also is full of light. But when they are unhealthy, your body also is full of darkness. Out of that ocean of content that is available to you on any given day, filtering out what is worthwhile and what isn't is important. Numerous studies have looked at the physical and psychological impact of media, and the results are conclusive. Media does have a physical impact on us. It also has an impact on our behavior, our mindset, even our moods. It influences us in so many ways. And if it didn't, guess what? Companies would not invest millions of dollars to put a 30-second commercial in front of your face. These days, it's getting worse. Since there is so much content, right? A fire hose of content coming at you all the time. There's so much content and so much competition for your attention. Influencers are getting more aggressive, trying to make sure that their content stands out above others. All of this calls for discernment, because as my wise father, whom I quoted on the bulletin today, once told me, once you put stuff in your head, you can't take it out. You can't unsee things, no matter how badly you may wish to. So guarding the gates of our minds becomes all the more important. Everything we watch, read, and listen to has an effect on us, especially visual media. Now, you may have seen this cartoon before that illustrates what researchers have noticed in many, many studies. That as media consumption has gone up, creativity and imagination have gone down. When you read a book or you listen to a story, it's up to you to imagine what the place looked like, what the events looked like, and what the people looked like. You can kind of see the book playing like a movie in your mind. A book also often goes into details of what a character is thinking, what motivates them, what they're struggling with. It all adds so much to the story, and it exercises that muscle of imagination. A book is an invitation to thinking. Do you ever wonder why God left his message to us in a book instead of a movie? A book is an invitation to thinking. And if the writing is done well, not only do you observe what the characters are doing, but you begin to put yourself in the story and ask, based on this set of circumstances, what would I do? And then you see the movie based on the book. Have you ever seen a movie after reading the book and thought, wow, that movie was so much better than the book? Never! I haven't. One of the reasons for that is because when you go see the movie, you are substituting someone else's imagination for your own. Someone else's vision of that book for yours. And usually, in your mind, something is seriously lacking. The only time in history when that wasn't the case was when Colin Firth was cast as Mr. Darcy in the 1995 BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Colin Firth is Mr. Darcy forever. But that highlights another problem with the things we put in our minds. When you see the movie first and then read the book later, you bring the imagination of the director and the producers of the movie into the book. You imagine the characters as the actors who played them in the movie, instead of building your own picture of the characters from the book and gathering your own insights. You cannot help but do it. Earlier this year, something wonderful happened at our house. Caroline picked up a copy of The Lord of the Rings and became a Tolkien fanatic. Fanatic, that's an understatement. She quickly read the entire trilogy, and now most days, if you drive by our house, you will probably see her making loops around the property with her walking stick and her satchel, and now after her birthday, her wooden sword, cape, and elf ears, having her own adventures in Middle-earth. The thing is, these are huge books. And even before she was done with that first one, she wanted to watch the films that Hollywood put out about 20 years ago. And I told her that she couldn't do that until she read the entire series. Because I knew that after she watched the films, she would forever see Elijah Wood as Frodo and Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn. She was a little disappointed at the time, but agreed. And she had a fantastic time working her way through the rest of the books. Now, once she was done and we were preparing to watch the films, which somehow I had missed. I was in England at the time, and when they came out and all that, so I've gotten through to my point in life without ever seeing these films, even though I have heard how awesome and fantastic they are. So once she was done and we were preparing to watch the films, I was reading up a little bit on the movies, and I suddenly realized that the battles in the story are presented very graphically in the films. I mean, of course, it's Hollywood. And I got to thinking, it's one thing to read in a book that an orc got his head cut off. There's another thing to watch it happen. And our girls have not been exposed to anything like this on TV or in films yet. So, once again, we're holding off. In the meantime, Caroline has constructed an entire personal world for herself in Middle-earth. And there's part of me that sort of hopes maybe we'll never watch the films. Because I know it doesn't matter how epic the special effects are, Hollywood is never going to be able to live up to her vivid imagination. But this is not to say that consuming media is wrong. It's just a matter of discernment. I mean, let's face it. We live in a media-obsessed, media-saturated culture, and unless you live like the Amish, it's probably pretty impossible to separate yourself totally from it. That's why Jesus talks about light and darkness, and to be careful what we put in our minds and what we allow ourselves to dwell on. Because apparently not only is darkness all around us, but it's very seductive and deceptive, and it's easy to invite it into our lives before we really know what we're doing. As Jesus said in Luke 11:35, if we embrace that darkness for too long, we might start to think it's light. That's why we have to be careful what we put in our mind in the first place. But we do have to put something in there. Did you notice the first part of the gospel reading when Jesus was talking about the evil spirits? When an evil spirit leaves a person, it goes into the desert searching for rest. But when it finds none, it says, I will return to the person I came from. So it returns. And what do you know? It finds that its former home is all swept and in order. Then the spirit finds 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they all enter the person and live there. And so that person is worse off than before. This example starts out great. A person freed from an evil spirit. But the problem comes when the person believes they can just stay empty and neutral. There is no such thing. Not in this world. They may have everything swept and clean and in order, but when the evil spirit comes back, if there's room for it, it's coming in with all its friends. We will all be filled with something, light or darkness. That's why I have to check myself nearly every day. Kelley, are you opening that Bible for as many minutes of the day as you are watching the news, reading the newspaper, on your social media? Are they at least even? Or how unbalanced are the scales? We will all be filled with something, light or darkness. God is light. And we can be sure then that He is going to bring His light of truth to us in some way. There's no doubt about that, and there is no way we can miss it when it comes. But then we are given the choice. Do we want to be filled with that light? Or would we prefer the darkness? And we can decide what we let into our minds. We can decide what we will dwell on. We can decide what we will focus on. We are the gatekeepers of our own hearts. And while it's true that we can't take out what we've put into our minds, I do think that if there's anything we've allowed in there that we regret, and I have a lot of that, if there's anything we've allowed in there that we regret, with God's help, it can be crowded out. The more light we bring in, the less room there is for darkness. And the more darkness we bring in, the less room there is for light. That's why Paul says in 2 Corinthians that this is actually a battle between darkness and light that happens in our minds. He says, it is true, we live in a body of flesh, but we do not fight like people of the world. We do not use those things to fight with that the world uses. We use the things God gives to fight with, and they have power. Those things God gives to fight with destroy the strong places of the devil. We break down every thought and proud thing that puts itself up against the wisdom of God. We take hold of every thought and make it obey Christ. Just as John wrote in our first gospel reading for today, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. But both are available to us. The light which God brings, or the darkness which the devil brings. We can decide which one we will be filled with, but decide carefully. For the words Jesus uttered 2,000 years ago are more relevant today than ever before. Be careful what you let in. Discern what it is that someone is trying to feed you. Be proactive in deciding what will enter your mind. If you feed your mind with healthy things, your entire body, your entire life will be healthy. And then, as children of the light, we can also become bearers of that light. Like lamps that God can lift up and use to be a beacon of hope in this very dark world. Amen.